Hello again, BookTube friends. Coming to you tonight with my attempt to walk through this book. This is Gettysburg by Stephen W. Sears. Almost every year about this time, as we get near to the July 4th timeline, I get to thinking about not necessarily or always the Declaration of Independence, but a series of other events that occurred around the beginning of July. Of course, that was a special time in 1863 as General Grant was closing in on the capture of Vicksburg. And of course, July 1 through 3 were the days of the Gettysburg battle, where General Lee's Army of Northern Virginia and the newly promoted George W. Meade's Army of the Potomac squared off in the southern Pennsylvania town of Gettysburg. I have 3 books on Gettysburg, but as is often the case with books on my shelf, I haven't fully read any of them. I have, of course, the Stephen Sears volume. I also have a book of about the same size by Noah Andre Trudeau, I think his name is. And I have a book by Alan Guelzo, if I'm pronouncing his name right, and his book is subtitled The Last Invasion. And for several years, I just have, around this time, I started thinking, it'd be a really good idea to jump on a Gettysburg book that I could be into or possibly even near completion as the anniversary of the Gettysburg battle comes around, and I've never accomplished that. And as is often the case around this time of year, every so often, maybe not every year, but many years, a Gettysburg-related book will pop up on the new releases, further inviting me to buy another Gettysburg book or think about Gettysburg in any event. And that's actually true this year too. Last time I was in Barnes & Noble, came across a book called, or part of the title is Roads to Gettysburg, and it offers kind of 3 separate parallel stories of Abraham Lincoln, of General Meade, and of General Lee. And it's written by, I can't remember the author's name, but he published a biography of James Monroe in the last 6 to 8 years, which was really good. So I thought about getting that. I thought about getting the this new Gettysburg book as well, but I thought, well, I already have at least 3 books on Gettysburg, and so and each of those books are fuller accounts of, appear to be fuller accounts of the story than what this new book is going to do. So I debated a little bit which Gettysburg book I wanted to read, and just going through some of the history booktubers, the Stephen Sears volume is highly regarded, so I thought I would turn to this and start reading it and see how it goes. So the first chapter is called "We Should Assume the Aggressive," and that's the chapter that I read earlier this afternoon. It is a chapter that looks at the Confederate High Command, specifically the Confederacy President. I'm blanking on his name, Jefferson Davis. We have Secretary of War James Seddon, And we have, of course, General Lee, and we have General James Longstreet, who was under Lee. And of course, while the Battle of Chancellorsville has recently concluded with a smashing but Pyrrhic victory for the Confederacy forces. They chased the Army of the Potomac, headed by fighting Jim Hooker, back across the Rappahannock. But in so doing, the Army of Northern Virginia loses one of its best generals in Stonewall Jackson. So, but meanwhile, again, as I said, they're for the Confederate government, they are dealing with the crisis down in near Vicksburg, and everyone down in Mississippi, the newspaper editorials, the governor of Mississippi, and the general holding Vicksburg. That's General Pemberton, I think his name is, who interestingly was from Pennsylvania, but had moved down, south some years before. But there are questions about his abilities and his loyalty. In any event, so after the Battle of Chancellorsville, in May, the Confederate High Command meets down in Richmond, and that's what this chapter is about. This chapter focuses solely on the Confederate side, and James Seddon and originally James Longstreet and other members of the Confederate government would like to divert forces from General Lee's army and send them either down to Vicksburg to challenge and divert General Grant, or alternatively send them up through Tennessee and into Kentucky to alleviate the pressure that is building on the city of Chattanooga, Tennessee, by General Rosecrans of the Union Army, and General Lee puts the kibosh to this plan, and he stresses that, well, one, he can't afford to divert any of his troops, because the Army of the Potomac, the Army of the Potomac, the Union Army is staffing back up again, is rebuilding its army, and is certainly going to make another push down on Lee's forces in the coming months. And so if forces were diverted again down into Mississippi, or even into Tennessee or Kentucky, that would leave him with insufficient resources to repel the attack. Even though General Lee's armies have always been smaller than the Union Army he's faced, he still doesn't want to continue taking his chances fighting against larger, more numerous Union armies. But he really wants to, for a variety of reasons, he wants to take the fight into the north, into Pennsylvania, or at least through Maryland and into Pennsylvania, as he wanted to do the year before, when he was stymied at Antietam, or Sharpsburg, as it's viewed or named by the Confederate side, where we remember that the Union forces were able to find the notes or the plans from General Lee of what they were doing, and so that enabled the Union Army to be prepared and that confused General Lee. He didn't at first understand why the Union Army responded the way it did, but then he later learned of this, this lost directive that had been found, and so he wants to proceed up north to take the fight into Union country for a variety of reasons, partly because the Southern Army needs to be fed, and there just are not enough resources around where they're camped, and the ability to get greater food, victuals to them by the Southern government and railroads is not promising. So the better alternative is to push north into Pennsylvania and reap the bounty, live off the land in the north. And but besides that, Lee, according to Sears, is kind of chastening at the bit to drive into the north because having faced General Hooker before, who he perhaps lightly regards after defeating him at Chancellorsville, wants to continue to try and play on the possible demoralization of the Union Army and the generalship and perhaps lack of competency exhibited by General Hooker. So Lee wants to take advantage of that. Lee also wants to take advantage of the fact that the Union Army, in terms of its numbers, is in transition. A lot of the 9-month people and multiple year members are cycling back out of the Army of the Potomac, and while new forces will come in to replace them, Lee wants to take advantage of this transition time of uncertainty to bring the attack to the north. And of course, Lee was very interested in discouraging the northern government and the northern cities and states, that by bringing a Southern army onto northern soil, it would encourage the peace forces in the north, and it would demoralize the backers of the war, and would bring Lincoln and the Republican government to possibly to the negotiating table and put an end to the war sooner. So that's where the chapter kind of wraps up. It wasn't a very long chapter, but it did give me some interesting background on how the Confederates were viewing things in that period. They've got the crisis down in Vicksburg, but they're thinking a triumphant battle in the north, or at least the very occupation of the northern area, would counterbalance what was happening in Vicksburg. And it sounds like Lee and many of the others were kind of reconciling themselves that Vicksburg was lost anyway, but that by going up into Pennsylvania, that they would compensate for that, and that they would ultimately weaken the northern government and bring them to the negotiating table, strengthen the peace forces, and hopefully on the Confederate side bring the war to an end. So that's where chapter 1 wraps up. The next chapter is entitled High Command and Turmoil, and it's about or I suspect that it's about the northern forces who are reeling after Chancellorsville and dealing with the behavior and attitude and plans of General Hooker, and what to do with the Union Army, how to build it up again after yet another defeat by General Lee's army. So I look forward to reading that. It's a little bit longer chapter, so I hope to get through it tomorrow, or even if I can't do that, at least part of it tomorrow or into the next day. But I do want to try and chip away at this book over the next month, and well, we'll just see how I do, and I will check back in with you again to let you know of my progress. Feel free. I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. Let me know if you have any of the books on Gettysburg, and if you have read any of them, and in particular, if you like one of the authors better than the other, and what your reasons are for that. I would enjoy hearing your input. So with that, I will bring this video to a close, and I look forward to following up on Gettysburg with you sometime this week. Take care. Bye-bye.